This is a Beargrass Black history moment. The big house became the schoolhouse. In 1879, a school of higher learning for African Americans was opened in Louisville. During this same year, Kentucky's 28th governor took office. These two seemingly unrelated events, upon close inspection, had historically significant connections. The General Association of Colored Baptists, now the General Association of Kentucky Baptists, acquired property at 7th and Kentucky Streets to open the Kentucky Normal and Theological Institute, the forerunner of current Simmons College of Kentucky. 16 years earlier, the property was part of a tract of land owned by Samuel Churchill Sr., a wealthy farmer who owned thousands of acres of land in Jefferson, Union, and Hardin counties. He had moved to the 7th and Kentucky site from his Spring Grove house of the Eastern Parkway area after the death of his wife Abigail in 1854. On the 1860 federal census, Schedule 2, slave inhabitants, Jefferson County, Samuel was reported as owning 22 enslaved persons and 3 slave dwellings. At this time, he was living in the mansion house at the site. This is where he died in 1863. His will listed over 100 enslaved persons who were left to his children and grandchildren. Daughter Julia inherited the mansion house and surrounding property. She was the second wife of Dr. Luke P. Blackburn. Daughter Emily, the wife of Hampton Zane, inherited property in the same area. Zane Street at the back of the property was so named after the Zanes who had once lived in the mansion house. Sons William, known as Henry, and John inherited the land of which 80 acres was leased to their nephew, Meriwether Lewis Clark. This land later became the Churchill Downs racing track named in honor of Henry and John Churchill. All of the so-named persons also received an allotment of enslaved people. During the Civil War, Dr. Luke Blackburn, too old to enlist as a soldier, became a Confederate operative. He and others were alleged to have attempted to infect Northern Union troops and President Abraham Lincoln with yellow fever by sending them clothes encrusted with dry pus and stained in blood worn by persons who had died from the disease. The plot failed. There was also a misunderstanding of how yellow fever was transmitted. Dr. Blackburn became known for his participation in this effort of germ warfare. He and his wife Julia lived for a while in Canada during this time before returning to Kentucky. In 1879, Dr. Blackburn was elected Kentucky's 28th governor, and Julia Churchill Blackburn became the state's first lady. Dr. Blackburn would be noted for his efforts to improve medical practices and the state's penal system. Blackburn Correctional Complex near Lexington, Kentucky, was named in his honor. It is ironic that the Churchill Mansion, the former big house, became the schoolhouse for hundreds of formerly enslaved persons and men who had served as United States color troops during the Civil War. The first 3 presidents of the school, Reverend E.P. Mars, Reverend William J. Simmons, and Reverend James H. Garnett, all were formerly enslaved and former Civil War soldiers. Reverend Simmons and his family lived in the mansion house while he was president. The third pastor of the Beargrass Missionary Baptist Church, Reverend George W. Ward, a former Civil War soldier, attended the school, later named Simmons University as well. One must wonder what the thoughts, if any, were of Dr. Luke and Julia Blackburn, Hampton and Emily Zane, Henry and John Churchill, Meriwether Lewis Clark, and other surviving descendants of Samuel Churchill Sr. had known of the school, attended by former enslaved persons and opened on the ground of their past ownership. It is also wondered if any of the formerly Churchill enslaved persons, especially ones who lived at the school site, attended the school. They must have marveled at what the Lord had done during their lifetime. In 1930, the mansion house, after 50 years in service as an administrative office and classroom building, was torn down when the University of Louisville acquired the property to open the Louisville Municipal College for African Americans. On the current Simmons College of Kentucky campus, and 7th at Kentucky Streets sits a large vacant lot near Parish Hall. This area is where the mansion house once stood. This has been a Cliff Notes version of 2 events that occurred in 1879. For more detailed information about the Churchill family, contact should be made to the Filton Historical Society, in particular to review the work done by Penn Bogart, a former Filson research librarian. Online Churchill Downs official sites and the Churchill Downs Museum could also be contacted. Contact can be made to the University of Louisville Archives and Special Collections and the Library of Simmons College of Kentucky for more information about the history of Simmons University. Molly Crosby's book, The American Plague, and the American Civil War magazine, Volume 23, Number 2, May 2010, both have information about Dr. L. Blackburn, yellow fever, and the Civil War. This has been a Beargrass Black History Moment.